all you literary loons out there, all you tale tellers and art warriors, you are listening to Rocky Mountain Revival Audio Art Journal. I am Levi Andrew Noe, your host, and thanks for tuning in. We do so appreciate you being here. In fact, we appreciate it so much that we want you to be a part of what we've got going on here. I wanted to start by telling you of our open door policy here at RMR. It's basically this. All writers, all musicians, poets, artists, and people with recording devices and thoughts in your head that could somehow be put into audible form, you are welcome. Anyone who has a story to tell in any shape, hear me. Now is your time. Colorado is your place. Denver, the Queen City of the Plains, is our home base, though we may consider submissions from other places, just as long as you swear undying allegiance to the Centennial State. And I will swear to you that this podcast is for you, the dreamers, the napkin sketchers, the tall tale tellers, the yarn spinners, the soul searchers and the mountain riders, you, all of you, and yes, I suppose even you. Did I make myself clear? Send your stories, songs, dreams, dramas, real-life adventures, and make-believe fantasies our way to rmrpodcast@gmail.com. We can be found on Facebook and Twitter as well, and someday soon on the World Wide Web. The revolution is here. The revolution will not be televised. It will be podcasted. And now, I bring you to our regularly scheduled program. Today, we conclude One Day as a Raven, a young person's illustrated adventure, but a story for all people. And we have a special musical treat for you with two songs, the Raven theme and the Coyote theme. Listen close when Raven or Coyote enter the scene, and you'll probably hear clips of their songs. More about those songs after the dramatic conclusion of One Day as a Raven. Now, if you had not yet listened to part 1, please stop now, before it's too late and you can never turn back. But for those of you who have been awaiting this conclusion for days or weeks or months, I give you the story. We'll start you with the introduction and the last 2 pages you heard in part 1. Enjoy, and please remember to silence your adult-mindedness before continuing on. It's story time. One Day as a Raven. Written and read by Levi Andrew Noe. Illustrated by Patrick Shannon Cross. Original music composed by Daniel Grant and Dwight Forsey. When you hear this sound, turn the page. Let the story begin. And then Jackson knew what a mess he was in. No one, not even his parents, recognized him. He would flee to the forest. Coyote he must find. He hopped to the door, tried to say goodbye, but instead he got a broom to his backside. And it was then that Jackson truly cried. Deep in the forest, once again, darkness and despair closing in, a little boy named Jackson cried in the body of a raven.
"Well, that's odd. I've never seen a raven cry,"
came a voice hidden in the night.
That's because I'm not a bird. I'm a boy. If you're not here to help, then go away.
But I am here to help, both you and myself. Because, you see, I'm afraid that you're me.
Jackson looked around, below and above, trying to see where the voice was coming from.
Where are you? What do you mean I'm you?
It's the strangest thing, I know. I didn't believe it until now. But what can you do? Here's the proof.
And then it glided down from the trees, like a shadow of the moon, like a dream, so graceful, so swift and so silent, shimmering and spellbinding, like a black diamond. Standing there, right in front of Jackson, was a real, true raven.
That's quite the handsome suit you're wearing. May I ask how you came to be so dashing?
Jackson knew there was no use lying.
I took it from Coyote's den. I made a wish, and now I'm a raven.
The real raven held Jackson with sharp, black eyes. She looked past truth, she looked past lies.
I know you, boy, better than you know yourself. You've made some poor choices, but you've still got your health. That's better than I can say for most who've been cursed. More often than not, they go crazy, or worse. Consider yourself lucky, my friend, to have made it this far under the curse of the raven.
Jackson felt unlucky, unloved, and sad before. Now he felt hopeless and swallowed by despair.
What do you mean I'm cursed? That can't be. You've got to do something. You've got to cure me.
Raven laughed, high and cruel.
Cure you? No, I'm afraid I can't help you. This isn't the sniffles or a case of the flu. You've been cursed. That's something only you can undo.
Jackson gave up then. He let loose. He lost it. He screamed, he howled, he moaned, he cried and cried until he was exhausted. Once he was done throwing his fit, Raven said,
Are you quite finished? I said I can't help you, and that is correct. You can only help you, but give yourself some credit. When I was young like you, I was tricked by Coyote too. It's a long tale and there's no time for storytelling, but there's one thing I'll say that's worth knowing. He stole two things from me, my feather, which is the secret to my power, but he also took my talon, and so he took my protection. You stole my feather from Coyote's jaws, but what, oh what, did he do with my claw?
Jackson remembered. He seemed to recall. He jumped up and shouted,
It's there on the wall. The feather hung down, clutched in a claw, and so that's your lost leg and my ticket home. I'll get it back for you. I'll return it, I will. But if I do, will you help me still?
Raven looked off at the moon, at the night, then looked back at Jackson with a light in her eyes.
If you return alive from Coyote's den, I'll do what I will. I'll do what I can.
To Jackson, that was as good as a promise. Perhaps he could still be saved. Perhaps all was not lost. Before Jackson could come up with a plan, he found himself knocking on Coyote's den.
Coyote, come out. I have something to confess. I stole your feather, but I learned my lesson.
He knocked several more times before Coyote came out, sleepy-eyed. He smiled slyly at the boy-turned-raven.
And what makes you think I wanted to teach you a lesson?
Jackson seemed surprised and let out a yelp. He thought truth and honesty would help.
But I'm sure that's how it works. You make a mistake, and then there's a lesson learned.
Coyote's laugh shook the leaves from the trees.
Oh, my My dear boy, you've been reading too many stories. I'm interested in tricks, not morals or ethics. If you came for a happy ending, you can forget it.
Jackson squawked and he squealed. He kept telling himself this wasn't real. He hit his head so hard on the door he was spinning. But then the door opened, and Jackson saw something. It was reckless, it was foolish, it was mad. It was the only chance he had. On the fire, a pot of water was heating up. Right into the pot, Jackson did jump.
If this is all just a trick, then I'm giving up. If I'm stuck as a raven, then I've had enough.
Coyote was surprised, to say the least, but now his mouth watered at the thought of a feast.
But are you entirely sure? There's so much to live for.
Coyote said as he added more wood to the fire.
I'm sure, I'm certain, there's nothing left to lose. If I can't be myself, at least I'll make a good soup.
Coyote tried to hide his smile, but failed.
I'm sorry this is the end of your story, but you will make a most nutritious meal.
Coyote's sympathies were as false as he. With a deep breath he blew, and the fire grew. The water was quickly getting hot. Jackson had to act quick, or else he'd be caught.
So this is how you're gonna cook me?
Yes, of course,
answered Coyote.
Oh, that's alright, I suppose. I'll just taste rather plain, but you're a coyote. I guess you don't know.
No what?
Coyote was offended.
Oh, nothing. It's fine.
Jackson pretended.
It's just that things taste much better when spices are added.
Oh, of course. Silly me. I knew that. Just sit still. I'll be right back.
Coyote raced out of the den, leaving Jackson alone with the talon. He stepped carefully over the flame and tiptoed toward the claw. It was almost within reach of his wings, but then he heard the shuffle of Coyote's paws. He ran as fast as he could back to the pot. He nearly screamed out. The water was so hot. Jackson had barely made it back in before Coyote returned to his den.
I found some thyme growing nearby, and I've some sea salt. Doesn't that sound nice?
Yeah, sure. Sounds like it could be okay. Good enough anyway for an animal's taste.
Coyote did not like being talked down to.
Oh, really, Mr. Chef? And what would you do?
Jackson was getting so hot, he was finding it hard to talk.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just a kid. But my mom always adds rosemary. Yes, that's what you need.
Rosemary? But that's all the way to the glade. By that time, you'll be done.
Then that's exactly why you have to run.
Coyote was gone again, grumbling under his breath. Jackson had no time to lose to complete his theft. He leaped from the pot, which spilled out with a hiss. Smoke filled the den like a thick cloud of mist. Jackson could see nothing. His eyes were burning. He felt his way to where the claw was waiting. He reached out and found it with his wings, then thought better of that and used his black beak. The claw was in his jaws. He was set to run off. But just as he reached the door and freed him, Coyote was waiting there to greet him.
I saw the smoke, so of course I came home. I knew I should not have left you alone. Try and trick a trickster. You thought you were clever. Now it's time to eat, and it won't be a slow simmer.
Coyote leapt for the raven, mouth wide open. But he was not quick enough for Jackson. The smoke was a cloak for the boy-turned-raven.
You can't escape me. This is my den.
Jackson was afraid that what Coyote said was true. He couldn't see, could barely breathe. He didn't know what to do. Then a fresh breath of air found him, but from where? Jackson looked and looked, but could not find a thing, until he noticed the smoke and how it was moving. Like a funnel, it found its way out of the den, set free, through a place above the fire pit. Of course, the chimney. Coyote was coming closer, sniffing Jackson out.
I smell you.
He snarled and took a powerful pounce. Jackson flapped away just out of reach. All that flying practice was coming in handy. Coyote crashed with a thump and a thud. He was taking his time getting back up. Jackson knew that now was his only chance. In this game of chase, he would not last. He flew for his life, full of fear, but brave. He had only one hope for being saved. The chimney was small, too small it seemed. Jackson wriggled and wormed, but could not squeeze. It took a frightful bite to finally set Jackson free. Coyote jumped and caught 2 tail feathers, or 3. The feathers pulled out. Jackson screamed. The scream let out the air from his lungs, so he was small, just small enough. He escaped, losing a few feathers, but still alive. He flew like lightning into the night.
Raven! Raven! Where are you?
Jackson cried.
You're pretty fast for someone who just learned how to fly.
From high up in a tree, Raven's blue-black body gleamed.
That was a close call, kid. I thought you'd be dinner for Coyote.
Jackson was out of breath.
Have your talent, but ouch. Coyote pulled a few of my feathers out.
Which feathers?
Raven squawked in alarm.
From my tail.
Jackson wailed.
Oh, phew. Well, that's no foul, no harm. The one I need is on your right wing, or your arm.
Raven first put back in place her long-lost talon. Then she counted Jackson's feathers, stopping at the last one.
This may sting a bit, but I have something for you to think about. It might take your attention away from the pain. Do you know the difference between a crow and a raven?
Jackson shook his head no.
No? Well, of course you don't. See the feathers on the wing? They're called pinions. So you start by counting. Crows will always have one less than a raven. So really, it's just a matter of opinion.
Raven looked at Jackson, waiting for a laugh.
What do I have to do? Saw myself in half? Forget it. Let's get this over with.
Raven caught the feather in a tight grip.
All right. I'll count to 3. Ready?
Jackson nodded, anxious and waiting.
1, 2.
Raven counted slowly.
Yow!
Jackson yowled.
You were supposed to count to 3.
And you were supposed to think my joke was funny.
Jackson rubbed his arm where the feather once was, but found no feathers, just something warm and soft. He looked down in disbelief and shock. He jumped with joy. He had his body back. But just as he jumped, the branch beneath him snapped. He fell and kept falling. Pop, split, crack. His body bruised by branches, sticky with sap. Jackson finally caught himself with his hand. He had fallen quite far, but the tree broke his fall.
You were more graceful as a bird.
Raven called. Jackson laughed and loved it. He looked upward.
I'd rather be myself, even if it means I'm awkward.
That's the spirit, kid. But before you get too excited, you should find a leaf or 2 so you don't get sighted. You're uncursed, but you're naked as a jaybird.
Jackson looked down. Indeed, it was so. and he wondered why in all the stories he'd known, when people change shape, they always have clothes. And that made him think of something else to ask.
Raven, please, can you help me understand? I thought that when strange things like this happen, there's supposed to be a moral or some kind of lesson. I don't feel anything but confused. Tell me, please, what am I supposed to do?
Raven flew down to Jackson's height in the tree. She peered at the boy, looked into him soul deep.
The lesson, my friend. Isn't it clear? When you fall under the curse of the raven, carry an extra pair of underwear.
Raven's cawing laugh echoed from the forest, all the way to the moon. Jackson chuckled, but he was in a strange mood.
You're the toughest audience I've ever had,
Raven said, but she didn't look mad.
Look, kid, in life, there's always a lesson. But sometimes it's mixed up, muddled, and messy. Morals don't come in a box with a bow. It's not always sunshine, ice cream, and rainbows. I can't say what you should take away from this. I'm not sure what you should learn from it. That's your story, kid. I've got my own to tell. So I'll say goodbye for now. And I do wish you well. I'm sure it won't be long before I see you again.
Raven began to beat her wings with the wind, leaving Jackson alone with all of his questions. The boy who, for a day, was a raven, walked home through the woods to where his parents were waiting. They'd be worried and angry. He knew the truth would not save him. He wondered if anyone would ever believe him. He thought about the story he was given. Why did it happen at all? Why did it happen to him? He did not know. He had no answer. Not now, and maybe not ever. But one thing he did know for sure. He was glad to be a boy, not a raven. He was happy to be himself again. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was One Day as a Raven. That book and audiobook would not exist without so many talented, amazing, generous people. Tomas Campos and Greg Jaworowski provided additional instrumentation. Jackson is played by Jackson Thunheim, and his mother was played by Annie Thunheim. Coyote is played by Lloyd Mills, and Laura Goldhammer played Raven. One Day as a Raven is published in association with Bee Publishing. Visit them at beepublishing.org. To purchase the ebook or audiobook, go to Amazon.com or the iTunes bookstore or Gumroad.com and look for us soon on Audible.com. If you were listening close, you should have heard plenty of tasty musical treats all throughout the story. Now, every single piece of background music and transition clip in between the pages was an original song. Without getting too gushy here, I have to thank, from the bottom of my fickle heart, my many dear friends who put literally hundreds of hours of their own personal time for little to no pay, all just to be a part of this creation. Starting with P.S. Cross, the illustrator and my friend since middle school, who spent nearly 3 years illustrating. Daniel Grant wrote music and recorded and dealt with my every musically ignorant critique. Dwight Vernon Forsey worked alongside Dan for a good amount of the time, adding his musical magic. And Max Winne did the most tedious, time-consuming work of mixing and mastering. My friends, my family, I could name everyone, but I won't here, because everyone would stop listening. So, let's listen to something besides my ramblings. I give you first the Raven Theme by Daniel Grant. This is my personal favorite song on the whole audiobook. I hope you enjoy it too. Now, some music for your ears. That was The Raven Theme by Daniel Grant. Now this next one is the Coyote Theme by Electric Thinking Machine. Although I have just been informed that they may be thinking of a name change, so they could be the band formerly known as Electric Thinking Machine. Anyways, they are Daniel Grant on piano and vocals, Tyler Morse on bass and vocals, Adam Buchholz on drums and vocals, and they can be found on Facebook. They are a band of singers, but this song is entirely instrumental. See if you can picture that trickster coyote shuffling his feet in some kind of quadruped jazz dance while you listen to this jam. that, ladies and gents, is all she wrote. And by she, I mean me. Now, don't you dare forget to subscribe, like, follow, friend, rate, and validate us anywhere and everywhere, and tell all your friends. We need writing, music, poetry, story ideas, interview suggestions, etc., etc. Email us at rmrpodcast@gmail.com with the appropriate subject in the subject line. We'll see you soon. Well, hypothetically. Until then, here's a haiku in honor of Colorado winters. So cold, I drink deep. Spill hot coffee on my crotch. This is war, winter.